What is your sweetest revenge? I was married to a woman who cheated on me not once, but twice in the space of a month. She had a degree in architecture and at the time made more money. I came home one day and she was gone along with all her clothes, our car, and all the money in the banks, but left both kids. I never got any child support or alimony and struggled for a while. She went on to work for the GOP in fundraising and was doing well, according to her family. I did finally get over it and got on with my life, and a couple years ago she tried to contact my eldest son on Facebook. He was not amused, and he found out that she ended up as a prison guard in Texas and living in a mobile home. My son came over with my new grandchild for a visit to my estate, 6,700 square feet home, 5-bed, 4.5 baths on 3.65 acres overlooking a lake, and told me this had happened. Funny how things get reversed. She lived in a trailer while I owned 6 houses, rentals, my own home, a nice Mercedes Cabriolet and a Cadillac. Makes me smile every time I think of it. What has an employee said that immediately caused you to fire them? A new supervisor started with us on a Monday. On Tuesday, one of our employees came into my office and told me that supervisor had told him the day before that he should come into work the next day wearing a pink frilly dress and some heels because he behaved like a little ass girl. I asked him what had led up to that comment, and he said that the supervisor had said it to him when he said goodbye to him at the end of their shift. We called the supervisor into my office and he admitted that he had made the comment, and he even said that the employee had done nothing to deserve it. When asked why, he refused to answer initially. When pressed, he yelled, "I don't like him. I don't like people from his country." We immediately fired him. He had worked for us for a total of 11 hours. Goodbye and good riddance. Police officers, how did you handle a jerk after pulling them over? The last guy I pulled over immediately started by yelling at me, "What the fuck do you want, stupid pig? All cops are bastards." I looked at him and said, "Will you excuse me, please?" and walked to the back of his car. I waited a count of 10, then returned to the driver's window. "Thank you for waiting. Since you were so nice to wait, I'm going to give you a second chance to make a good first impression." "What'd you say?" He looked at me and then started laughing. Okay, I shouldn't have popped off at you, officer. But this just put the cap on a really shitty day." I told him that I occasionally had shitty days, and could give him the benefit of the doubt. "No foul. No autopsy. We're good, but you do need to remember that you can talk yourself into a ticket way faster than you can try talking yourself out of one."
What did someone say to you that instantly made you realize your life was in danger? My wife, our toddler and I were going to take a nap on a weekend afternoon, because we were just not quite feeling ourselves. Before lying down, my wife called a doctor's office to make an overdue appointment. All she got was a lady from the answering service, or possibly an angel. We were not able to ascertain which, as we never met her in person. The lady told my wife that the office was not open, and when it would reopen. My wife replied that she was going to try again later, as we were going to lie down for a nap because we were feeling tired, cranky, and woozy. This had nothing to do with what she had called about, just making conversation. Still, only going by that, the lady deduced that we were dying of carbon monoxide poisoning. She told us to leave the house now, and called 911 for us. Turns out the chimney had collapsed, and flooded the house with carbon monoxide. The levels were deadly. Had we gone to sleep, we would not have woken up. The nice lady saved our lives, just based on my wife mentioning conversationally that we were going to take a nap. If that is not impressive, I don't know what is. Thanks, nice answering service lady, wherever you are.
What school rule had to be put in place because of you? My first husband passed away in January 2001. My daughter was 16 at the time, in 10th grade. I permitted her to take a week and a half off to grieve, but getting homework assignments from her teachers. When she returned to school, her history teacher told her that she had a report due that day. She had not been made aware of the assignment, as the teacher had only given it a week prior. The teacher told her, "Well, you should have been here when it was assigned." She told her that her father's death was not a good enough excuse for missing class. She came home in tears. I called the school the next day and spoke with the principal. He agreed that the teacher had been out of line. The teacher was made to apologize to her in front of the class, and was written up for being insensitive. I asked the principal if I could schedule a grief instructional seminar for the staff, and he agreed. The seminars still happen every year. I also spearheaded a grief counseling group, headed by a wonderful hospice nurse. It still exists today in that school. What's something a police officer knows that would scare normal people? Seeing how quickly and unexpectedly you can die. Man went to McDonald's, which was a treat, for his family's dinner, and on the way back, was broadsided in the driver's door. He's dead in the driver's seat and his family's dinner is all over the front of the car. When he didn't come back, his 10-year-old son went looking for him on his bicycle and came up on the accident scene. The child climbed into the wrecked car and was hugging his dead father. We weren't going to stop him, and the fire department stayed longer than they normally would have in case there was any unexpected fire. Another officer took the child home in his police car and informed the wife of what had happened. Prime example of one of those evenings when a cop skips dinner because he has no appetite. The driver that hit him was a teenager who had just stolen a tank of gas from the local AM/PM mini market, and was being chased by the idiot store manager in his own car. We arrested them both, though that did not make the outcome any better.
Reddit, what's your worst first date experience? At lunch today I was sitting next to a couple and a friend of theirs that they were setting up a blind double date with. Dude was wearing Black Rifles Matter shirt, and when the girl arrived she was in a March for Our Lives shirt. It was the most quiet, awkward, fast lunch date I have ever seen. Oh man. I was talking to a guy online and we finally agreed to meet for a date. I get there and there is a woman sitting with him. It turns out that it was his wife and they were looking for a third. He never mentioned that during our chats and then called me a twat for saying that I didn't want to get involved. Be careful with who you meet online by using publicdatacheck.com to get their full background report, which includes criminal records, driving records, and more. Went on a date with a guy I'd met through a mutual friend. Things seemed pretty normal until we were sitting and waiting for the movie to start. He got his phone out and started showing me pictures of two of his ex-girlfriends. Both women were completely naked. My worst first date was also my first date ever. I was about 14 or 15. The girl I liked asked me if I wanted to go on a date. I was over the moon. She told me to meet her at the park. When I got there, she was there with her friends and they all laughed at me for thinking she would ever want to date a loser like me. Law enforcement officers, what's the angriest you've ever been while on duty? I think nothing can top how angry I became when I was called to an apartment and found a dying 1-year-old baby boy who had been beaten with an electric cord by his mother just because he had wet the last diaper she had. Any number of us there that night would have bought her diapers if we had known. By the time I arrived, there was no helping the child who died, whimpering almost inaudibly, as the ambulance medics came in. The mother, realizing that she was about to be arrested for murdering her own child, had a major panic attack. Many of us who witnessed this tragic end to this sweet baby's life, wanted to be the judge, jury and executioner and drag her out and beat her to death. As civilized people, we realized that two wrongs don't make a right and that the system of justice would have those roles. The moment that child breathed his last faint breath, I realized that the extreme sadness for this child, and my anger toward the monster who killed him, combined together, was almost more than I could stand.
What is the douchiest, worst thing you've ever seen someone do to their significant other in public? The other day I was standing in line to get food, when I noticed the couple in front of me. Right away I knew he would be a complete tool. It was 8 p.m. and he had sunglasses on inside, lowering his head to peer over them at people. He was in full Ed Hardy gear and was gripping the shoulder of the girl next to him aggressively. She was chatting away excitedly about the food she was going to order. He rolled his eyes at her and didn't listen to a word she had to say. She seemed nice enough, bubbly and friendly, and had a banging body. Thin, naturally tanned, toned, with massive boobs. They approach the counter and she brightens up as she orders her meal, fries with cheese and gravy. The guy next to her makes a noise of disgust and says loudly, "I can't believe you're eating this shit, you're going to end up like her." He nods behind them. To me, I narrowed my eyes at him as she goes on to say she'll have a Coke. The guy holds up his hand to her face and goes, "She'll have a water." Now, he could just be looking out for her well-being, but people should always be allowed to make their own decisions. A significant other does not get to make it for them. I was livid at this point. Not only had he insulted me, but he'd also completely shut down his own girlfriend. Douche. Bag. What is the best case of, you just picked a fight with the wrong person, that you've witnessed? In the gym where I worked, a young guy insulted an elderly lady who was working out on an exercise bike. Her husband, about 80 years old, 145 pounds, was nearby and told the guy to apologize to his wife. The guy took one look at this little old man, laughed in his face, and told him, "Fuck you," then raised his fists. I ran around the front desk and started toward them, but I needn't have bothered. Ed, the 80-year-old, grew up on the streets of the Bowery, was a combat paratrooper in the Korean War, an army boxing champ in his weight division, and still worked out on the heavy and speed bags 3 times a week, in addition to strength training. The guy never knew what hit him. 3 times. When he came around a minute later, with a swollen jaw and a broken nose, he started screaming that he was going to call the police. Ed told him, "Here, use my phone." And I told him, "Go ahead. You tell them you got your ass whipped by an 80-year-old man, and the rest of us." There were others gathered around by this time, "We'll all be your witnesses." He screamed, "Fuck you," again and ran out the door. Never saw him again. Ed told us later, he was a big guy. I knew I had to put him down in a hurry or I was going to be in trouble. I've seen a few others, but that one was truly the best.
Police officers, what was the most ridiculous reasoning someone gave as to why they committed a crime? I had a guy I once arrested for burglary. He pulled the burglary. We had him on videotape doing the job. He gave us a signed and written confession which was also taped right after the burglary. This guy was a repeat offender, so he knew that he would be going away for many years, but he didn't seem to mind at all. He seemed rather happy about the whole thing. Finally, I just had to ask him why he was so happy to be going back to prison. He looked at me and said, "When I am in prison, my wife gets to use a public aid card for medical needs. She desperately needs an operation that public aid will pay for if I go back to prison. It will save her life." The man was willing to give up his freedom so his wife could have an operation paid for by public aid funds. Every now and again I think about that man and the price he was willing to pay to keep his wife alive. That's true love.